Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this 4-fold card using the Perennial Lavender paper and the lavender stamps and dies. So it's got 4 pieces. I've made them before where they're 3, but this piece is fastened together, but this time it opens up and it's got the 4 panels. So this is how it looks when it's closed. This is how it looks when it's open. So without further delay, let me show you how we make it. So it uses more or less a whole sheet of cardstock, and it's cut at 8.5 by 5.5. It's scored at 3/4 and it's scored at 4.5. The 4.5, you know, is what we would normally just fold it in half for. And then it has an extra piece, which is, let me look at my instructions, make sure I'm giving you the right sizes, is 6.25 by 4 3/4, and it's scored at 2 3/4. So what we need to do is we need to bring in the paper trimmer, because we have to cut some of the pieces down, and we are going to put the piece, the 8.5 by 5.5, that's scored at 4 1/4, we're going to cut down at 3/4 inch. And the nice thing about the Stampin' Up paper trimmer is it's got measurements up to 1.5 inches on the right hand side of the cutting blade. So we'll line it up at 3/4 and we'll cut it down as far as the score line, as far as the 4 1/4. So make sure it's lined up at 3/4, cutting blade in, and bring it down as far as the 4 1/4. And then we're just going to take our snips, which are buried, and just trim that piece off going down the score line. So this piece is actually extra. And then we also need to go where got the smaller piece at the top. Again, we're going to line it up at 3/4 inch, and we're going to cut down to the first, well, not the first score line, the only score line, which was, as you'll remember, 2 3/4. So we'll cut down as far as that score line, and then again we will just snip the piece off down where the score line was, and that piece will come out and be spare too. So that's all we need the paper trimmer for right now. What we're going to do is score on all the fold lines. So we've got that one. We'll score it at 4 1/4, which is basically the card in half, but we'll also go ahead and score this little 3/4 inch area. And then what we need to do is we need to attach that to that fold. So when it all goes back on itself, that becomes the piece. So we need to attach this fold to the back of this piece. And I'm actually just going to use the liquid glue for that, because it needs to be quite strong. So I would suggest you use the liquid glue, or you use the tear and tape. Oops, my glue has stopped working. Get another one. That one seems to be gasping its last. So we'll go ahead and we'll attach the back of this one to that, up to that score line. So if we do it with a liquid glue, the nice thing is it's a little bit forgiving, and you can make sure you get it in the right place, and then just hold it for a second or two until it gets a chance to get a grip of itself. Get a grip of yourself, man. So we'll just pop that off till it dries a smidge, and I will show you the pieces that we need for the rest of the card. So this is the piece that's going to go on the back, and this is cut at 4 by 5 1/4. That's the usual 1/4 inch smaller of a layer. We've then got 2 pieces that are cut at 4 1/2 by 3 1/4. So we need 2 of those. And then what I did was I went ahead and stuck these on. small confession, because I stuck them in the wrong place and I peeled them off, and before the sticky got everywhere I went ahead and put them on. But they are 3 by 2 1/8 each, and you'll see actually that the pattern is the same piece of cardstock because it follows across. And then I'm also using a piece of crumb cake, same measurement, 3 by 2 1/8, and that will go on the top of those pieces, and that will become the layers for that one. And then we've got a piece for the front, which is 2.5 by 3 3/4 and 2.5 by 3 3/4. So let me go and get all those stuck on, and then we're not wondering where they've managed to run off to in the grand scheme of things. So oops, we'll just use some rolling adhesive and stick that one to the front with its usual layer around. Stick that one on the inside. We'll go ahead and stick this piece of crumb cake at the top of this one. And then pop the whole thing on. And we'll do the same with the other piece. So we'll pop the crumb cake on. And then the whole piece onto the card. And then last but not least, for the layers, we'll put the biggest piece of designer series paper, the one that's 4 by 5 1/4, onto the back, which is basically the inside. So there we have all the pieces lined up, ready to be the card. And now we can get on to decorating. So what I'm going to do is on these 2 pieces, we are going to put a little piece of lavender. And I went ahead and cut some out with the dies. Ew, it's this die. You can see there are just 2 little pieces. So I already cut them out, and then what I wanted to do to make them be a little bit more realistic rather than having purple stalks is I brought in the Stampin' Blends, and I'm using, I can't remember what I'm using. Stampin' Too Late at Night. It's the shaded spruce, which is the green, which is in the designer series paper. So we'll just stamp that one quickly. And everywhere you feel there would be a little stalk, and it would look less silly if it was solid purple. So there we have it. It just gives it a little bit of extra realism. And then what we'll do is we'll bring in the silicone mat, because we don't want to get our work surface sticky. And we'll go ahead and stick a little bit of glue on the back side of these. And the nice thing about the liquid glue is you can just make teeny tiny little dots and stick them into place at the side. Just hold it there for a quick second until it dries, and then we'll do the same with the other little piece. Because it's so fine, it's nice to be able to put little dotty dots on, and we'll put that one at the side of there. We're going to be stamping a greeting on this part, so it just adds a little bit of extra where it was just the plain crumb cake. So that's that piece. What we need to do next is do a little bit of stamping. So I'll bring in some basic white cardstock, and the lavender ink is got Gorgeous Grape and Highland Heather. So we'll use the Highland Heather. And what I did was I stamped it once and then I just skewed it just a little bit to the side. So I stamped it once, just moved it over so there's slightly a little shadow. And then I used the die, and when I cut it out, this is how it looks. So this one I did with a Highland Heather. Actually, I thought that one was a little bit too intense. So I then went ahead and used the die, which is this little guy, and I pre-cut it out. And then what we need to do is we need to use the shaded spruce with the stalks. And I felt the stalk was a little strong when it was full strength. So I'm just going to stamp it off on a scratch of paper and then stamp it. And you get the same colour, just a lighter refrain. And again, I went ahead and used the die, this little die here, and cut it out. And this is what I ended up with. So stamp those two, run it through the die cutting machine, and this is what we got. And while I have the basic white handy, I am going to stamp, now I'm going to cut a heartfelt hexagon punch out of the white, and that will become the little area inside you can write a message on. So we'll start with the inside, and what we'll do is we'll just put some glue on the back of there. And what we don't want is when the card is closed to be able to see it. So we just want it to go more or less here. Won't exactly push it down until I'm sure you can see it. Well, it's decided that's where it's going to go, so that's where we'll leave it. So we'll put some glue on the back of the stalks and some on the top, and then we'll put them down like that. And this will, we don't want it to overhang where that is, because we don't want to be able to see it until the card is opened. So that's the pieces just like that. This little white surface is just enough to be able to write a message on. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead with the Gorgeous Grape, because it's the slightly darker purple, and we'll put the inside greetings in. So we want to say, well, the message is going to read backwards. So it's, where would I be without a friend like you? And the other one is going to say, just a little hi from me. I'm going to just put that slightly across to the left. So when this, there is enough space in this instance, but always remember to sort of slightly orient it left. So when the card is closed, it can't be seen. And then the last thing we need to do is put the greeting on the front. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it onto a piece of the Highland Heather cardstock, but we're going to stamp it slightly down towards the bottom. We don't need the ink pad anymore. And then I'm going to cut it out, but I'm going to cut it out down at the bottom of the stamped. The stamping is going to be at the bottom of where the punch is, because we're going to make it slightly smaller. So this is, the ladies who come to my house, we laugh about this. You just need a little bit of something to be able to put it in, and we just take a scrap of paper, and we call these our executive extenders. So you put the, you just lightly glue it on to the executive extender, and then you can move it up or down wherever you want your punch to be smaller from. So we'll move it up like that, and then press, come out. We've got the extender, which doesn't matter, and the scrap. And then we've got the little piece with the message in the middle. And then we'll go ahead and punch a full size one out of the darker purple, the gorgeous grape cardstock. And then when we attach this, it's created a border around, and then that can just go on the front of the card. I would say you could put dimensionals on. You know me, I like dimensionals, but this card is, you know, 4 layers thick. And I think if you started to put dimensionals on, it would just make it so fat you would have to pay the extra postage. And I don't think it particularly needs anything extra to make it look as lovely as it does. So we stamped the message in reverse, but now we can see it says, "For you, just a little hi from me. Where would I be without a friend like you?" And then there's a little area inside that you can use to write a message. So that's the card, 4-panel fold card, both of them pretty much the same. If you like what you've seen, please consider subscribing or give me a thumbs up. If you've got a question or want to make a comment, pop it in the box below. I'll always try to answer everyone who passes a comment or asks a question. I'll put the dimensions and all the pertinent information in the description box as usual. And I'm doing Zoom get-togethers now and kit classes. Unfortunately, my blog is still being worked on, and until it's up and running, you can check out my website, alysonstamps at stampinup.net. The link for that is in the bottom, where you can just click it and it will take you over. And if you check out the calendar of events, it will let you know when it is and what the RSVPs are. Or alternatively, you can email me to see, you know, what the details are with absolutely no obligation. I'd love to have you join me, but I know people don't like to email because they feel like they're going to be, "Are you coming? Are you coming?" That's not my way at all. If my blog was running, you'd be able to click on it and it would be an anonymous search, as it were. But I promise you, if you ask for information, I'll give it to you, and then I'll leave you alone to decide if you want to come or not. But just keep my fingers crossed that the answer is you do want to come. So that's all the information I think I have for you at this time. And last but not least, thanks so much for watching.